The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now.
And welcome to The Factor Uncensored. Black Lives Matter is stirring the pot again. A big-ass California mansion bought with fundraiser dollars is not sitting well with many in this country. New York Magazine and the New York Post dropped the organization in the hot grease. They found records showing the nearly $6 million transaction on the house was designed to be kept as a financial secret when it went through last year. The co-founder of Black Lives Matter recorded a video last summer commemorating 1 year since the death of Houstonian George Floyd. As shocking as this may sound, my guests aren't totally blown away by it. Take a look.
I wasn't surprised because there were allegations before about several leaders buying high-priced mansions in the LA area, I believe, Atlanta area. So this is something that is not out of the blue. But it is a misstep because I'm not against people making money. But the thing is, when you're an activist and you look at the history of Black America, when you look at Martin Luther King, you look at Malcolm X, they were famously meager in their approach about things. Martin Luther King famously donated winnings from the Nobel Prize back to the movement. Malcolm X lived in a home that was owned by the Nation of Islam. When he left the Nation of Islam, he lost that house. When Martin Luther King passed away, Black celebrities like Harry Belafonte had to pay for his kids to go to college. So we've always seen activists take an approach of kind of like a preacher would take a vow of poverty, a pope or whatever, a Catholic priest. So it's always going to look bad because when you represent the people, you don't want to live high off the hog with that money. People want change with that money. They don't necessarily want lavish buildings. They want the money to go to some programs. So it looks very, very bad. It gives opponents a reason to challenge the Black Lives Matter movement and throw shade at it. So I think that these people need to really reassess what they do with that money and try to put some of it back in the community or more back into the community.
Tex Christopher, what's your opinion of what you've seen with Black Lives Matter and this $6 million mansion, more than a half dozen rooms, studio, and it just goes on and on and on?
Isaiah 5:20 says, "Woe unto them that call evil good." I previously spoke on this topic before on your show and made it very crystal clear that this organization came out and said, look, we're an evil organization. We're calling on spirits. We're promoting destruction. Destruction leads to murder. So when I see evil being done within an evil organization, none of us are surprised because nothing good comes from evil, but woe unto those. And so much so that the same people that embrace this whole Black Lives Matter, and they went out there a year ago this week, they were destroying our country. They were burning things down, and they are doing it all in the name of protest. Well, now we turn on the 5, 6, 9, and 10 o'clock news, and it's the same people that embrace this Black Lives Matter ideology that's out here shooting and robbing and killing people. So this evil organization was used to destroy our organization, and I'm not surprised that they spent the money on $6 million for a house when it should have went to, if you want to be a community and to help. George Floyd's family didn't get anything. Breonna Taylor's people didn't get anything. So they used and they exploited these individuals to get what they wanted. It was to destroy and murder our country and get what they want.
I don't think that, let me jump in. I don't think that the organization is evil. I think evil exists in everybody, in every organization. We can look at the Republican Party and look at the violence that was unleashed on this country in the name of overthrowing an election on January 6th. We can look at some churches, and I'm a proud Christian. There's a lot of evil.
I was about to invoke the televangelist, one who is in Houston as well, who famously, allegedly kept his doors closed when Houston was drowning. All right, so there's a lot to be said. I mean, if we're gonna talk about appropriation of funds, and if we're gonna talk about being good stewards of money, then we need to look at organizations, activist organizations, and some of our churches who hide behind the 501c3s for their ill-gotten gains. I'm old enough to remember the air-conditioned doghouse that the Bakers had. I'm old enough to remember the PTL when they were bringing money in, and they were, the Praise the Lord organization and the Swaggers and all of this. So there needs to be a wholesale accounting for anybody that gets public funds, and there needs to be an accounting for what's going on. Even the televangelists right now. Amen. Some of these televangelists will famously say, well, we're not going to take a salary, but they're publishing books that their congregation is required to buy as part of their worship. They're owning companies and they're using that to funnel money back into their churches. So there needs to be a collective focus on where this money is going whenever you're dealing with 501c3s and nonprofit organizations. Now to the issue of the day and what Todd had spoke of earlier. This is definitely a misstep. It is not uncommon for people who run nonprofits to buy homes and to buy lavish properties that they can use for fundraising, that they can use for other charitable focus to get money back into their organizations, which goes and helps the cause at large. But because there is a history of this, because there is a history of purchasing $1 million homes, because there is a history and there are questions before about financial mismanagement, that's what makes this a distraction. But I'm not going to go so far as to say the organization is evil and that anybody who donated or accepted money is evil in their stead, because there are a lot of other people who claim to be doing the Lord's work that are practicing these same practices, and people are quiet and not really holding them to account.
Now, all organizations, nonprofit organizations, have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of that money once they get it from the public. Do you think this will be damaging and hurt any other potential fundraising efforts of Black Lives Matter?
Right, and there's also an organization whose name escapes me now, where you can go and actually check, Navigator, that's what it is, and actually check where this money is going. Because for every dollar donated, there needs to be somewhere between 70 to 80 cents that goes to the actual charity's mission. And Navigator, Charity Navigator is what it's called. You can go online, charitynavigator.org, and you can check this organization to see where they rank. And if they have a 4-star or a 5-star rating, anything below a 3, that should give anyone pause about whether they want to donate to it. So if you're going to donate money to an organization, whether it's a church, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the Red Cross, you need to check with that website, with that nonprofit independent website, to verify whether this is an actual organization that is using your funds for good. Now, having said all of this about Black Lives Matter, a lot of us got caught up in the George Floyd murder and what happened with him. And we wanted to stop this. We wanted police to be held to account. We wanted local governments to be held to account. So people opened their wallets and donated. And it's really unfortunate that that cause is now at the forefront of something that looks nefarious by all accounts.
Now, our conversation heats up after the break with Tex doubling down, essentially saying this is what Black Lives Matter deserves.
You are reaping what you have sown. So if you don't like people shooting people and murdering and robbing people, because this is what the big agenda was of Black Lives Matter, is lawlessness. That means go out there.
Would you agree with that, Dave?
No, I would not agree with that at all. There was no one at Black Lives Matter went out there and endorsed the destruction of property and the murder of police.
I totally disagree with
that. That is a misnomer. That is completely false.
And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. We are talking Black Lives Matter tonight and the alleged secret purchase of a $6 million mansion in Southern California. This poses a question: is BLM, as we know it, done? Is this organization done after this? Does this mansion hurt their fundraising efforts and their reputation?
I think it will, because we talked about the church and televangelists. A lot of people won't go to church and won't tithe their money because they think that the preacher is going to steal their money. And I'm hesitant not about the church, but I'm hesitant about who I give my money to, no matter what the organization is. So people have to realize people are really, they hold on to their money and they want their money to go to where they want it to go to. Like Dave said, a lot of people wanted this to go to police accountability. We could have used that money to maybe send some Black students to college and criminal justice. We need more Black people from the neighborhood to patrol those neighborhoods because they understand the people. But Tex brought up the evil. It exists in everybody. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. When you get that money, you can have the purest heart, but let you come up on $10 million. We'll see how honest and non-evil you really are. And it applies to the Black Lives Matter. It applies to the churches. It applies to the Democrats. It applies to the Republicans, young and old. The love of money is the root of all evil. And we found out what that love of money can do, even with Black Lives Matter. And we need to check them, because our credibility is on the line, just like the church. The church's credibility is on the line because a lot of pastors don't do what they do. And we don't want anybody else to fall in that trap, because we want the message to remain pure. But in order for that to be that way, the messenger has to remain pure. And these messengers are not pure anymore because of the love of money.
And Texas is red meat for conservatives they've been looking for something on Black Lives Matter.
Well, you know, the truth is going to come out eventually, like I've shared with you on this topic before. So we already knew the end because nothing good comes from evil. You guys have already talked about where there's smoke, there's fire. All right. And the viewers are smart and they're watching this. When you see an organization that promotes destruction, and then you sit there and you sow financial seed, well, then guess what? The viewers that sowed seed into Black Lives Matter, you are reaping what you have sown. So if you don't like people shooting people and murdering and robbing people, because this is what the big agenda was of Black Lives Matter, is lawlessness. That means go out there.
Would you agree with that, Dave?
No, I would not agree with that at all. There was no one at Black Lives Matter went out there and endorsed the destruction of property and the murder of police.
I totally disagree with you.
That is a misnomer. That is completely false. He cannot cite one single person who did that. People in Black Lives Matter, and here's the thing, there is video that any Google search will turn up where people were dressed up as Black Lives Matter activists going around just doing destruction and doing damage. I think, Isaiah, you tweeted it and you posted it on some of your social media channels at the height of the George Floyd protests. And you had Black Lives Matter out here, Black Lives Matter activists telling people, do not do this, telling people this is not what you're supposed to do. We didn't ask you to do this. We're asking you not to do this. So to conflate protesters and rioters and then say it's all one big jumble and this is what they're reaping and sowing, that to me is a bridge too far.
Now, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter blasted the New York Magazine and New York Post report, saying on Instagram the property was purchased to be a safe place for Black people in the community. The reason it wasn't announced prior is not nefarious, as the headline infers. The property needed repairs and renovations. I have never misappropriated funds, and it pains me that so many people have accepted that narrative without the presence of tangible truth or facts. Whoop. And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. A controversial purchase from Black Lives Matter, a $6 million mansion using donor funds, has sparked a heated conversation with my guests. Is it over for Black Lives Matter? Should they still continue? While they will agree the buy was shady, the negative connotations that come with BLM is something totally different. Take a look.
And you can Google the owner of Black Lives Matter, and there's a video where she blatantly says, look, you're a fool. This is her exact word. She goes, you're a fool if you think this has anything to do with Black Lives Matter. She says, we are calling on the spirits every time the initials BLM are spoken. And so she said that in a podcast at a university over there in California. So they sowed seeds of discord, and that's what we're reaping.
Check this out, Tex. A lot of times that I've noticed that conservatives, some white people, whenever they see a Black person commit an act of violence after police brutality, they blame it on Black Lives Matter. Every Black person is not in Black Lives Matter. I'm not taking blame away from anything that anybody in the organization does. But if I do something crazy, don't blame my fraternity or my church or my family, blame me. So a lot of times the Black Lives Matter can be misconstrued. I'm not in Black Lives Matter. I support a lot of things that they do, but that doesn't mean that I'm a member. So we have to separate Black people from Black Lives Matter just because there was a police officer.
Even going so far as, for example, the church that was going around protesting military funerals because of America's acceptance for gay people, the church out of Kansas that was doing that, the Baptist church that was doing that a few years ago, it was all over the news. You had Baptists who were like, this is not Fred Phelps and his organization. I'm not a part of that church, but because he called himself a Baptist, everyone got conflated into it. There are churches right now who are sanctioning the voter suppression that's going on with Black people, that are sanctioning a lot of policies that are hurting Black and brown people. And other churches are like, no, we're not with that. That does not made it. So you cannot conflate everyone together. I know it sounds really good and it sounds really, it's a talking point that's making its way around right-wing circles and in right-wing media, but that is not the case. And I am telling you, Black Lives Matter leaders have no one associated with it or who are listed on the charter as organization founders are out here advocating violence. That
Black
is not
Lives Matter has been bailing out people who have attempted murder on other politicians. Black Lives Matter have been bailing out people that are burning and destroying buildings. This organization.
White people raise money for George Zimmerman. When George Zimmerman killed Trayvon
Right, white people raise money for George Zimmerman. White people raise money for the young man in Wisconsin who was shot and killed. You know, white people are having funds for the people who stormed the Capitol on the January 6th. So, you know, so I mean, are we going to go there today and talk about all the other stuff that people are doing that you aren't really saying much about, but diverting to Black Lives Matter? I mean, where is your outcry about that, Tex?
So as Dr. Phil says, how's that working out for everybody? Because it's not, because
well, it's working out quite fine because some of them are out of jail and some of them are getting lesser sentences than other Black people who have done things for and got far greater sentences. So it seems to be working quite well.
But the facts on the 5, 6, 9, and 10 o'clock news educates all of us otherwise.
All right. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about. And of course, the future of Black Lives Matter is on the line with some of the things that we have seen recently with the mansions and the other homes. Thank you guys for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored. We appreciate your time.